If you're interested in Pam Bodtcher, that's going to tie Pam Bodtcher to all of this. What's in those documents?
When now convicted child abusers Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt were arrested in Utah in 2023, their so-called mental wellness and life coaching business, ConneXions, was thrust onto the national stage. The two women would eventually be sentenced to spend years behind bars for starving and inflicting physical and psychological wounds on Ruby's two youngest children, and all the while they were giving parenting advice on ConneXions podcasts and social media pages. But they weren't the only two involved in this controversial organization. You may remember another name from this story, Pam Bodtcher. We're digging into who she is, her connection to Ruby and Jodi, and the accusation she's now facing from an alleged former member of ConneXions, who's blowing the whistle on what he calls a cult. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Pam Bodtcher has been at the fringes of Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt's story, and her name has definitely come up here and there, and she's definitely played some sort of role in this whole saga. So what we want to do is put her a little bit more into the spotlight. Take a closer look at her apparent involvement. So who is she? Well, Pam Bodtcher is reportedly one of the higher-ups in a counseling group called ConneXions, which is also known as ConneXions Classroom. This was started by Jodi Hildebrandt in 2012 as an online-based program offering workshops, group counseling sessions, leadership training, and more. Pam was at one time listed as the president of ConneXions Foundation. Now, only parts of the ConneXionClassroom.com website are still active. It seems that its homepage now diverts to this ad for slot machines in Thailand. That's at least what we found. But previously, it said the purpose of ConneXions was, quote, to invite and encourage healing and facilitate personal growth through impeccable honesty, rigorous personal responsibility, and vulnerable humility. But many have now come out to say not only was it all just a money-making scheme, but that Jodi used the company to ruin dozens of relationships. That is the allegation she's facing. And according to her bio on the ConneXions website, Pam Bodtcher has a degree in interpersonal communications, is a mother of 7, and grandmother of 14. And it's important to note as we make our way through this saga, and we want to be very, very clear about this, Pam Bodtcher has never been criminally charged with anything in connection with the Ruby Franke or Jodi Hildebrandt case. I want to make that very, very clear. Here's the thing. We first heard about Pam Bodtcher after Ruby and Jodi were arrested at Jodi's huge house or compound in Ivins, Utah. And to give you a little bit of a backstory to catch you up here, Ruby Franke was this mommy vlogger who at one point had amassed more than 2 million followers on her YouTube channel called 8 Passengers. She was arrested with her business partner Jodi Hildebrandt on 6 charges of aggravated child abuse. The women kept Ruby's 2 young children, then 12 and 10, separated from the rest of the family and abused them really badly. Physically, emotionally, mentally. We've heard about duct tape found wrapped around the boys' ankles and wrists, both children being forced to stand in the hot sun for hours, being forced to jump into a cactus. That was one of the revelations that came out during the course of this case. And according to her own journals, Ruby believed the 2 children were evil, that they were possessed by demons. And according to Jodi, the only way to save them was to essentially hurt them. And the 2 women both later took deals. They pled guilty to 4 of the 6 counts of child abuse. And they're going to be spending potentially up to 30 years in prison. It'll be up to the parole board to decide when they actually get out. But here's the thing. If the 2 youngest kids were at Jodi's compound in southern Utah, where were Ruby's other children, right? Well, the 2 oldest, Shari and Chad, they were both over 18 years old. They were out on their own. Kevin Franke, the children's father, the estranged husband of Ruby Franke, had been essentially excommunicated from the family, told that he couldn't talk to any of them or see them for at least a year. We'll get more into that in a minute. But according to Shari, her younger siblings were often left on their own in the family's Springville home. Shari had even called the Department of Children and Family Services to check on them, but apparently when social workers arrived, they said the children inside refused to answer the door. Now, on the day that Ruby and Jodi were arrested, police were trying to find the 2 teenaged middle daughters, and investigators in Ivins called authorities in other parts of Utah to try to find them. Police end up searching the Springville home. No one's there, but eventually police got word that the girls might be with Pam Bodtcher at her home in American Fork. And that is when officers had their first interactions with Pam and her husband, Roy.
How's it going?
Good.
I'm Officer Hawkins, sir. I'm looking for Pam. Is Pam in today?
Yeah, that's my wife.
Is your wife? She's here? Hi.
Hello, Pam. How are you doing?
Good.
I'm Officer Hawkins, American Fork Police Department.
Hi.
So we had a agency assist out of St. George and Springville that we're just looking for. Okay. When you picked her up, what was the case? Did somebody ask you to pick her up, or did you just pick her up? What was going on?
Well, I'm having guests coming, and she came and did some cleaning for me.
Some cleaning for you?
You work right now in the
In
house.
the living room right here.
Okay, great. We're gonna have both of you come out here then.
If you can, just for a second, we just have to go over some stuff.
You have a warrant?
Yeah, we do.
Let me see it, please.
So it's in my car, but right now my concern is.
Will you just tell them you're all right?
Well, we
Yeah.
have to physically see her.
Under that doorway.
We'll go ahead and get the copy of the warrant for you, okay?
You have a warrant for my house?
Specifically for you.
For you and the child.
Yeah. Okay. So,
What is going on?
as of right now, I'll just need you to give your phone to your husband.
Okay.
And as of this moment, you're going to be detained right now, okay?
Okay.
Okay,
So
so
what
is
does
there
that mean?
is there anything on you?
No.
Okay, perfect. Just put your hands in front of you, okay? Just going to place you temporarily
Wait,
under
wait.
arrest, okay? I'll explain to you that I'll explain
What
to
are you guys doing?
I've explained this already. I'm being as courteous as I can,
Okay,
okay?
well, I'm going to call an attorney.
That's fine.
I don't know what's
Yeah, I don't even know what this is all about.
Okay. So I'm going to explain to you when we get to the car.
So-
Yes, I just explained to you that you're being detained right now.
Now, the officers on scene aren't sure exactly what fellow law enforcement found at the compound, but they know it's bad. For example, at this point, officers at the scene are not quite able to get into a large safe in Jodi's basement, and there were fears that there could be a child locked inside. Now, fortunately, that turned out not to be the case, but during the conversation with Pam, he learned new information about Pam's seeming connection to Ruby.
Those are my friends' daughters.
Okay. So your friend's daughter's in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Is Ruby Franke's daughter.
Okay.
And she's a friend of ours. She comes over and helps me every once in a while to do cleaning and stuff.
Okay. So this is what happened, okay? Her parents were in the situation of a child abuse allegation.
Okay.
DCFS made the report and went to the house and found children malnourished and locked in a safe.
In the safe?
In a safe. Okay. So now those officers and DCFS have to take custody of those children, and we're looking for this one. The rec center, when they went to go find her, said that you picked her up.
Yeah.
So
I did.
now they are trying to figure out
Why I picked her
why
up?
you picked her up, what you know with her. Is she okay? Did she come here willingly? All that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, they
So
can
as
ask
soon
her
as they
that.
come here,
Yeah.
we'll be on our way.
Okay.
Okay, that's why I said you're just detained. You're not placed under arrest just right now until they figure out what's going on with their part.
And during his conversation with Bodtcher, the officer learns that actually both girls are at her home, not just the one she picked up at the rec center. Then you go over back to the front porch where Bodtcher's husband, Roy, and one of the girls are still in the doorway, and he tries to contact Ruby, gets no answer because by this time she's in police custody.
Girls, I have no clue what's going on, and I don't know what's going to happen. So just, the worst thing we can do is try to fight it. So, you know, just go with it, whatever, and then sort it out. I don't know how that's going to happen. So we'll see.
And the investigators also questioned Bodtcher about ConneXions and how she knew Ruby. But interestingly, they never really bring up Jodi.
How did you start to know the family? How did you guys meet?
The Franke family?
Yeah.
Through a program called ConneXions. It's a kind of a life skills
Yeah.
type thing.
Okay. So tell me more about like when you first met them through the program, or not really know what the program is.
She was a coach.
She was okay. What type of things do they do with the program?
It's like life skills.
Life skills.
Like learning how to, it's like be honest, responsible, and humble. Those are those three pillars of their program.
Is there like a meeting place where you met, or was it kind of a
No, It's online every Saturday morning. It's called Empowering Joy.
Okay. How long have you known that for?
Oh, geez. Probably, oh gee, I don't know. Let's see. I mean, I didn't know her really well because she was in the program, but I didn't really know her. But I've known her probably really well, maybe 3 years.
Is this like a program that she started, or is it just one that she kind of?
She's just a part of it.
She's just part of it.
So according to Utah's KTVU, the Department of Children and Families told the teens that they could either stay with their sister or be placed with a foster family. And the girls reportedly didn't want to leave the Bodtcher home, but eventually agreed to stay with their sister Sherry. Now, police ended up interviewing the children's father, Kevin, to find out about ConneXions and Jodi and how it all connects back to his family. And what Kevin had to say sounds almost, in a way, too fantastical to believe. But according to Kevin, Jodi told Ruby she was being haunted by demons. So Ruby decided to move Jodi into their home, apparently kicking her oldest child, Sherry, out of the bedroom so she could watch over Jodi during these episodes. And again, Bodtcher is brought up once more.
Then she started having like trances and stuff, I would say probably September, where she believed that she was going to heaven and seeing God and Jesus and talking with them. And she would get together with Pam Bodtcher. Ruby, Pam, and Jodi would get together and do these interventions. That's what they call them. And so they'd just go up and lock themselves in a room for 4 or 5 hours, and then they'd come out and they'd all just be on cloud nine. And Ruby would share with me, like, she had this amazing vision, and I wrote it and recorded it all down, and we have a work to do from God, and you're part of it, and the bishop's part of it, and we're all part of bringing all this stuff to the world.
Kevin claims that Ruby had fallen completely under Jodi's spell and even wanted to give up their wildly successful business and YouTube channel so she could work with Jodi at ConneXions. And once again, Bodtcher is brought up once more.
Ruby, Pam, and Jodi were completely determined to do this work that they felt God had for them. And I thought it was crazy. Like, I thought it was just crazy. Like, Ruby, you have a reputation, you have a multi-million-dollar business, you have a brand, and you were just giving it away. She wanted to legally, like, work with Jodi's attorney to basically give Jodi 8 passengers and become an employee of ConneXions. So basically the contract was Ruby gives Jodi everything and Ruby gets nothing in return. Our manager, our YouTube manager at the time was like, red flags, like, I don't know how to tell you, she is scamming you. Ruby fired him. And I was like, I believe our manager, I think he's right. And Ruby started threatening me with another separation. And just like, this isn't about money, this is about doing God's work. And so we continued in that dynamic for the next 6 or 7 months until she went on a trip with Jodi and Pam down to Arizona, and I think they, like, when I read her journal, she went into Mexico or something and bought drugs or something, like prescription drugs for the emergency kits.
Now, Sherry also talks about these trips to Mexico and Pam in her new memoir, The House of My Mother, A Daughter's Quest for Freedom. In fact, one passage reads, Pam, Jodi's oldest and dearest friend, high up in ConneXions, was always popping by with a case of soda and a high-pitched hello that set my teeth on edge. The three of them, Ruby, Jodi, and Pam, would hole up in my old bedroom for hours on end. They went boating in Lake Havasu in Arizona for a week and would make little shopping trips down to Mexico, coming back with grocery bags full of pills. When I asked about it, Ruby claimed it was all part of their grand plan to stockpile antibiotics for the end of days. It was as if they'd formed their own exclusive apocalypse collective, and the rest of us were decidedly not on the list. Sherry also wrote, referring to Ruby, Jodi and Pam had become her ride or dies, her squad, her soul sisters. They were the three musketeers of the apocalypse, ready to follow each other literally to the ends of the earth, or at least to the nearest Mexican pharmacy for another antibiotics run. So Pam appears to be, by all accounts, definitely friends with Jodi and Ruby. But I want to delve a little bit further into her alleged involvement in ConneXions as a business. So we learned a lot of the specific allegations against Pam in a massive civil lawsuit filed in federal court in Utah that essentially accuses Jodi of running a criminal enterprise, racketeering, tricking people out of their money while also wreaking havoc on their families. That's the central allegation. Now, Michael Tillman, we first told you about Michael Tillman's civil action in January. The 150-page lawsuit names Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt as defendants, along with the life coaching business ConneXions Classroom, LLC. And the lawsuit also names Tillman's ex-wife, who's apparently also named Michael, with the last name Savage. He's seeking at least $5 million in damages, claiming the defendants were, and still are, essentially, running a racketeering enterprise through ConneXions. Now, we've broken down different parts of the lawsuit in separate episodes, including an overarching review of the lawsuit, as well as the supposed misconduct committed by Jodi on behalf of the alleged criminal enterprise. You can check out those full breakdowns over at the Law&Crime YouTube channel. But today, I want to look specifically at the parts of the lawsuit that mention Pam Bodtcher. Now, to be clear, she is not named as a defendant, but Tillman basically considers her a co-conspirator in the overall scheme. The lawsuit reads, Bodtcher has attempted to conceal her involvement in the enterprise, but she is in fact integral to it. Since Hildebrandt's and Franke's arrest, guilty pleas, and sentencing, Bodtcher's central role in the enterprise has come to light. Bodtcher has been involved in the enterprise in the following ways. Quote, until the ConneXions website was deactivated, Bodtcher was identified as the president of ConneXions Foundation on the ConneXions business team page and has been identified as such since at least August 2020, one of the earliest iterations of the page. Upon information and belief, Jesse Hildebrandt told the media that Bodtcher was deeply involved with Hildebrandt's behavior, including that she was, quote, one of the people that was constantly surveilling, the surveillance of reporting back to Jodi, that Bodtcher was, quote, always at Hildebrandt's house, and that Bodtcher was, quote, Jodi's best friend. By the way, Jessie Hildebrandt is Jodi Hildebrandt's niece. We've spoken with Jessie before here on Sidebar. Really, really compelling interviews. They tell us that their parents left her with Jodi as a teenager because of supposed behavioral problems. And Jessie says they were basically tortured by Jodi until they were finally able to escape. But when you go back to the lawsuit that Michael Tillman filed, he claims, quote, Bodtcher's close relationship with Franke within the enterprise is demonstrated by Bodtcher visiting the Ivins residence during the time that Franke and Hildebrandt were actively torturing victims 1 and 2 on the premises. That is the first time that we can tell that someone has claimed that Pam Bodtcher visited the Ivins compound when this abuse was going on. So then the questions become, if that is true, could she have known? I mean, she was reportedly best friends with Jodi and Ruby and an apparent follower of Jodi's extreme beliefs. Would they have shared what they were doing? It's a fair question, considering these allegations. Also, I will tell you, I think it's interesting that she's not named as a defendant in this lawsuit. Perhaps Mr. Tillman wants to file this lawsuit, have her as a witness, a cooperating witness in this case against the others. Maybe something to think about, not entirely sure. But I will tell you this, the lawsuit also talks about Pam and her husband Roy's interactions with police on the day Ruby was arrested, which we talked about before. Quote, upon information and belief, when law enforcement came to Bodtcher's residence and inquired about J and A, meaning the daughters of Ruby Franke, Bodtcher's husband did not want to allow law enforcement to see the children, and instead wanted to have J and or A tell officers from behind a door that they were okay, indicating Bodtcher and her husband did not want law enforcement to observe the children while Bodtcher and her husband were forcing them to work at Bodtcher's residence. Now, let me just be clear about something. That's an allegation. That's a narrative you could put forward. The other way, of looking at this could be police show up. They don't know what's going on. They're looking after another person's children, and maybe they didn't feel comfortable just turning them over to the police. That was something that came out during the course of that body cam footage. So 2 different perspectives on what we can make from that body cam footage. But the lawsuit continues. Quote, the media reported that Kevin Franke's attorney stated that Bodtcher frequently attended ConneXions trips with Hildebrandt and Franke. As explained above, Bodtcher also actively furthered the enterprise by teaching ConneXions classes via interstate wires and at ConneXions conferences, and by laundering money for Hildebrandt and the enterprise through the ConneXions Foundation and Bodtcher's personal accounts. Just to be clear, Pam has never been charged with any sort of crime in connection to this case. But look, her proximity to this case has led to a lot of whispers, a lot of speculation about whether or not Pam Bodtcher should be held accountable for something here. Time will tell if she continues to be swept up in this. But again, allegations in this lawsuit. She hasn't been criminally charged, but hopefully this provides a little bit of a better explanation about her apparent connection to everybody else in this case. That is all we have for you right now here on